How is it going? Did we start? I'm sorry. I was thinking it was going to pop up on the screen. Good morning, I'm Amy Elston and you're watching the USF Vessel Online. Today we have Dr. Brett Bradfield, USF's 23rd president. Now you were just inaugurated just a couple weeks ago, so tell me how it's been so far.
Well, it's been good. I've actually been in the position since January 31st, so the inauguration was a bit of a postscript for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me, have you had any challenges so far as president or any joys you've experienced?
Yeah, well, the current state of higher education across the country has all kinds of challenges embedded in it, regardless if you're public, private, for-profit, nonprofit. It's not uncommon to hear everyone talking about demographic issues as far as getting a student population, and that's usually connected to declining net revenues and changes in our industry from federal compliance. So those are always the challenges that are before us. The joys, honestly, you know, people have asked me, has it changed since you were provost? The joys for me are the continuation of dealing with students, you know, our most prized asset here at the university.
Okay. Well, going back, you mentioned being provost before, kind of just acting as vice president when president was doing other things.
Yep.
Did you, looking back then, ever think that was being president something you had in mind for your future?
You know, early on, no. In fact, I was a principal of a high school here in the city, and I made a very deliberate lifestyle change. And then I kind of gradually got pulled further and further into the administrative ranks in here. And it's been a great gift to me. And I would say in more recent years, you know, I did do some thinking about that possibility, but you know, as all of us do, you know, there's always other measures in life that have to be considered, family, etc. And so, you know, I wouldn't say that it was at the top of the peak, but more and more I began to think about those kinds of possibilities.
Good, okay.
Yeah.
So then how did this opportunity present itself?
Well, Dr. Mark Benedetto had been president of the university for 20 years. I had served as provost the last 12, but I've been here 17. And when Mark decided to leave, the university embarked upon a search, and that began on July 1st of 2016. I had to get my years straight here. And you know, at that moment, I think there were a lot of people that assumed I was a candidate right away that morning. I did a lot of reflection, a lot of thinking about primarily what was right for the University of Sioux Falls. And at a certain point, late in the application process, I submitted my application. It was a very, very professional process, complete confidentiality maintained, and I was honored to go through the process, of course, with no presumptions of any kind of where it would end up.
Okay, cool. Well, going back to just last week, USF announced tuition reset. Were you part of that process in the decision making, or how did that all go about?
I've actually steered it.
Okay.
A little over 2 years ago, I told everyone on the cabinet at that time that I felt it was time for us to reconsider our business model in the current state of affairs, as I mentioned early in this conversation, of higher education. And I did a price sensitivity study, price elasticity study as it's called, used a third-party vendor who's well known in our industry for enrollment management, Ruffalo Noel Levitz. The study came back with very precise statistical data. It used our own inquiry pool, our own students that were prospective students that were looking at our university. We surveyed them and their parents about the sensitivity to price in their decision making and staying at a university once they got there. The study was compelling, but not compelling enough at that time to say there's a lot of issues out there. But over the last 2 years, you could almost feel and sense changes. And in my inauguration speech, I went a little bit of a detour from typical inauguration speeches, and I took a little bit of a risk doing that, but I talked about an alternative future. And that became a highlight of many comments that came to me. Of course, that day I knew about this. We had been working on it for 8 months.
Oh,
We ran a second price elasticity study, and this one came back much more compelling, that there was price sensitivity in our ranks. And the other thing that was a compelling thing for me is among our existing students and our alumni, we heard loud and clear the concern about how I continue to afford education. And if we believe that education is a gateway to opportunity, then we also had to believe that part of our mission was to make it accessible for all students.
Okay. Just before we wrap things up, how do you think USF will benefit from the tuition reset?
Well, the measures of that will be interesting. I think we've already benefited for all of our students who've already seen real life savings that will continue as long as they're a student. For those that are seniors, the benefit is short-lived, if any. But I also believe that it will help USF to our mission. And this was a very mission-centric decision to be able to draw in students of all socioeconomic status and allow them to have the experience of a private Christian liberal arts education if that's what they seek. And it will help us position ourselves in the marketplace, be continuing to be great contributors to the community of Sioux Falls, the state and region, that also supports our existence.
Okay, well, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today.
That's my
That's all we have
pleasure.
time for, so we'll see you next time.
Yeah,
Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Yep.